I don't know about you. I don't know why I'm talking like this. Hey do 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 do. Hey boo boo. Okay, if there's one thing we DIYers love to do, it's shop for new supplies. I don't know about you, can't get enough of it. I'll wander the aisles of Michael's and Dollar Tree. I mean, there is just nothing better than finding that new product or that extra special thrift find that you know you can make into something really special. But sometimes it's, budget friendly DIYs can be just as far as your own craft room. And that's why I thought we would try a little segment called Shop My Stash. Let's go. This DIY, you just need any inexpensive wooden cheese board. I found mine at Dollarama for like $4. And then I went into Canva and I created this "But First Cheese" sign to add to my Cricut. I decided to go with a nice shiny Cricut material vinyl. You could really use any vinyl that you like, any color that you like. I just wanted to try out this, I think it's Epson Cricut vinyl that I got for Christmas. Once the design has been cut out from your Cricut, just peel back that vinyl really carefully. I found this to be a particularly skinny vinyl. I think I would weed it differently next time if I was to do it again. And then just using your little Cricut tool there to remove any of the bits and pieces in your lettering that you don't want there. I also decided this time to try the Cricut transfer tape that I got also for Christmas. I didn't like it. I found the reviews are true. I found it to be really sticky. You'll see here I struggle a lot with getting it to lie down really nicely and flatly. You can see I had to work really, really slow here, pushing down with a lot of pressure to kind of get everything on. And then when it was time to peel it off, I found that it took up lots of the little bits. It didn't really come off all that nicely. Just lay it down on the part of the board that you wanted. I wanted it to sort of be on the bottom portion of the board, smoothing it out with your Cricut scraper to get everything stuck onto the wood quite nicely. And then again here you'll see I struggle. I really struggle. I had to pull out the pick and go back and forth, and I'm sure I have additional gray hair. I really don't recommend it. I like the sizer myself. The sizer transfer tape, I find everything just goes on really easily. Everything comes off really easily. You can reuse it. I did not like this Cricut tape. I'm going to keep it. I'll keep using it, but I think I'm going to stick to projects where it's not a lot of detail, and so it doesn't really matter that it sticks so much. The next thing I used from my stash was just these round cardboard lids. I'm not even sure where they came from, but I thought that their shape was quite nice. Then I just went in with some Art Minds metallic copper. You could use any copper paint, chalk paint really. I just happened to have this on hand, and I gave both of the round cardboard lids one coat of this. Again, I just went with a foam brush. It's just easy. It lies it all down nice and smooth, covers a lot of space, and I don't always like to clean things, and they're really easy to clean. Then I grabbed I had some cardstock, just craft paper cardstock in my stash as well, and I cut strips of the cardstock at about 1/2 inch thick, and using my hot glue gun I glued that down around the rim. Then I took out my measuring tape and figured out about 1.5 inches between each. I used some grommets, I think they're called. They're the things that, you know, spin paper, and I cut off the back and hot glued those down on those 1.5 inch pencil points. I know this seems like a bit of an odd step, but you'll see in a minute how it finishes it off really nicely. Once I had all those grommets glued down, I went in with a paintbrush. This time I went with a paintbrush. I can't seem to make up my mind. And I put on a second coat. And then it was time to head outside. Using Bear's antique copper, I gave the base, it was a candlestick base that I had also in my stash that I didn't really like. I'm not even sure why I bought it. But it turned out was a good thing. And I just gave that a nice coat of the Bear regular copper spray paint. Oh, je m'excuse, c'est en français. Here, English. I went in with the Universal Rust-Oleum Universal Hammered Paint. It just adds that little bit of texture. I happen to have this on hand. It's a totally optional step, but I do find that it just gives it that bit more of a realistic texture when it's all said and done, and really makes it look like it's true copper. You'll see in a minute, but again, totally optional, up to you. And using my hot glue gun, put on a generous amount of hot glue. Now this is just going on cardboard, so I didn't go in with anything stronger than hot glue. Again, optional, totally up to you. You pick whatever adhesive you feel most comfortable with. It's cardboard. I don't care. And then I just centered that on the lid, making sure that both lids were, the open part was facing up. You'll see why in a minute. Dollarama had these round floral foams that just would fit perfectly. You can use the square ones, you'll just have to cut them out more. The round ones are really nice. I just cut out a hole, gave it a slit, slid it around that. Did leave a little bit of a space, so I just cut out another little piece of foam that I had on hand and popped it in. And on the top one, I just popped that buddy in. Then using a mix of florals that I bought from Dollar Tree and Michael's that I happen to have in my stash as well. I bought them during their sales. They have their summer sales and spring sales recently. I just cut down those stems and stuck them into the flower foam, arranging it as pretty as possible. When you're arranging florals, work so that the middle part is a bit higher up than your outside. So you're sort of creating like a dome-like effect. And there you have it. Can you believe that this is actually made from a couple of old boxes and a candlestick? It's incredible what you can do with things if you just get a little creative. I can't wait to change up the flowers. I could see using this in fall, even winter. I like it. I don't know, I really like it. But you tell me, did I turn this trash into treasure? I had this tray just kind of kicking around my stash. I grabbed some of my favorite milk jug chalk paint. I love that color. And I gave folk art milk jug. And I gave the whole tray and a couple of nice coats of paint, trying to get it as smooth as possible. And then I realized that that was futile. So I headed outside and instead opted for Rust-Oleum chalk paint in, I believe it's linen. If I'm wrong, I'll pop up the name on the screen, and I gave that a couple of really nice coats, and that it was so much easier. I'm a total sucker for teal, and so when I saw this antique aqua chalk paint art mines on sale at Michael's, I had to have it in my life. And on this tray, I decided to add it just to the edges of the inside of the tray, just to give it a little pop of color. So I did use some painter's tape to give it a nice clean line. Again, popping into Canva, I just created this really simple design, went in and picked, and then downloaded it into Cricut. It's a finer detail, so I went with washi tape to cut it out. I find that if you're doing a really fine details, washi tape seems to just cut things out quite nicely, and loaded it into my Cricut and let it do its thing. And when it was done cutting everything out, I peeled off any of the detailing, any of the vinyl parts that I didn't want. Next, trim it down so that it fits perfectly into your tray. I am terrible at measuring. And so admittedly got everything out. It didn't fit perfectly into the inside of my tray. So I had to trim it just a bit to make it fit. I also had to use 4 pieces. I found that it just made it easier to arrange, and my mat, I don't have a long mat. I use the short mat. I also went with the sizer transfer tape this time because there's a lot of detailing and it just works the best. Then whip out your handy dandy Cricut scraper and start really working that vinyl into the transfer tape. This pattern is very small, and when you're working with a very small pattern with lots of pieces, you want to make sure it really sticks so that when you peel it away, it comes out in one piece. Then laying it really carefully, putting it into place. You need to get that right into the corner there. Butt it right up and make sure that all your lines are super straight, and then just smooth it down with your hand, and then whip out your handy dandy Cricut scraper and make sure that you again just really work that vinyl in so that when you peel back the transfer tape, the vinyl sticks to the wood and not to the tape. And then once you have everything smoothed down, start to gently peel back that transfer tape. You're going to want to smooth it out as you go and really make sure you're using that scraper to work in the vinyl so that everything sticks. Lastly, you're going to want to get those last little strips in there because again, I didn't have a big enough mat to do it without it. So just lining it up, making sure it's perfectly straight and against the edge, working it in with your Cricut scraper so that the vinyl sticks, and then peeling it away. To finish, I just went over it and made sure that I got every little bubble and bit and stuff. Again, I'm not going to use a heat press or heat vinyl. And there you have it. I love this tray. I'm simply in love with it. I just think it looks so retro and kind of cottagey, and I don't know, it just charming and nostalgic. Tell me, what words would you use to describe this tray? This next DIY really shows how you can take something from the dollar store and just really customize it so that it meets your needs. So I don't need a Bless This Kitchen in my kitchen. What I do need is a tool holder in my garage. So I started by just removing the pull knobs at the bottom of the sign. And then I went in with a little bit of oatmeal chalk paint from Folk Art. I wanted to give the sign a worn, distressed look. So I only used the chalk paint to cover the words, and then I painted a little bit into the wood, but I made it look really distressed. You'll see here what I mean. I don't go to the edge, I just sort of get it covered. Then I went in with my Rust-Oleum chalk paint in, I believe it's linen, and gave that a nice coat of paint. Then I went back into Canva and created this garden market sign, loaded it into my Cricut, and let it do its thing. Again, I did do this on washi tape because there was a fair amount of fine detailing in the words and a little bit in the image itself. Here's a little tip. Peel your Cricut mat back and away from your vinyl. Don't remove your vinyl from your Cricut mat, because when you do it that way, it rolls up, and when you remove your mat from your Cricut vinyl, it just lays down nice and flat. And then using my Cricut tool, I just peeled away the vinyl and started weeding out any part of the design I didn't want to be left. Little tip, Dollar Tree has these nail polish holders for $1.25 that is perfect when you're weeding. You just slip it in between your fingers and then pop all those little pesky pieces of vinyl into it. This time I decided to try a Make Market. Michaels came out with it, vinyl transfer tape. I didn't mind the vinyl itself, not a fan of the transfer tape. I found that it was way too sticky, much like Cricut, and that when you tried to lay it down, it bunched. When you tried to remove it, it was very sticky. You had to keep scraping and applying a lot of pressure. Again, I prefer sizer. It's totally up to you what you're most comfortable with, but again, I really like the vinyl itself, not a fan of the transfer tape. And then to finish it off, using an X-Acto knife, I cut out any bits in the slats and then wrapped a bit of faux lavender around the top with a bit of twine.
I hope you enjoyed Shop My Stash. If you did, subscribe. hit that notification bell and give me a thumbs up. You might also enjoy these. And I'll see you next time.